This time, we'll call the October meeting of the County Clerks Modernization Task Force to order. Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll for members that are participating virtually? When your name is called, please let us know whether you are participating from your annex office or from your district remotely.
Senator Mills, Senator Webb, Senator Wheeler,
Present in the room.
Representative Bridges,
Present remotely from District 3.
Representative Flannery,
Present remotely, District 96.
Representative Tackett Lafferty, Co-Chair Howell,
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Meredith.
Present in the room. Do have a quorum and are ready to proceed with business. I think our first order of business would be approving the minutes from the September 22nd meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion from Senator Wheeler, a second from Co-Chair Howell. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Proceeding with our agenda for today, we will start with representatives from Enterprise Rent-A-Car to make their presentation. If you could come forward, introduce yourselves for the record, and then you can proceed with your testimony for the task force. May want to get your microphone. I don't think it's on.
There we go. All right. My name is James Nelson. I'm the group controller here in the Kentucky market with Enterprise Holdings.
And I am Jeff Evans. I'm the group vehicle acquisition manager with Enterprise Holdings.
All right. So first, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak, and we certainly appreciate the initiative that this task force is in charge of. Just a brief introduction to who we are as a company. We're family owned and operated, and we operate the largest fleet in the world. Enterprise provides total transportation solutions that include truck rental, fleet management, car sharing, and of course car rental under our brands Enterprise, Alamo, and National, which is why we're here today. We also operate a retail used cars dealership in the Louisville market. We're a dynamic company that's been operating here in Kentucky since 1991. We love Kentucky. We invest here. We hire here. We currently have 950 employees who are over 90 plus locations with a rental fleet of roughly 14,000 vehicles. Our fleet size makes us one of, if not the largest customer of the clerk's offices. We appreciate the committee's initiatives to find efficiency and advancement within the clerk's offices. And before we get into our specific issues, I want to thank the Car Dealer Association for their efforts to improve the retail side. We're in full support of some of the initiatives that they're working towards. So here is Jeff, and Jeff's going to kind of walk you through some of our challenges as it stands today.
Yes, before I start, I'd like to thank everybody as well. This is a project we've been looking forward to for several years. Again, my name is Jeff Evans. I'm a lifelong Kentuckian. After graduating from college in 1991, I started working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and that just so happens to be the same year Enterprise located to Kentucky. At that time, Enterprise was a little-known company, and the territory that we managed here in Kentucky also expanded out to West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio, Maryland, several different states. Due to our growth, our territory here no longer includes those outside states, but I'm familiar with how licensing and renewals are done in each of those states and many other states across the country. We are asking not for a financial request, but rather for an efficiency request. For my dealings with these other states and other states around the country, we see opportunity for all parties involved. Our company has seen states throughout the country adapt to either a fleet license plate, or a fleet decal to help reduce paperwork and cost, and it also expedites procedures that we are asking you to take into consideration today. So many states across the country have adopted to a permanent fleet sticker or a permanent fleet plate. We are asking that you review this for us, and we are proposing, and what we are proposing we see as a win-win for all parties involved. On our end, this eliminates a lot of logistical issues that we deal with decals, which cause downtime for our units. On your end, we see less paperwork, less cost, less supplies needed, less mailings needed, and less clerk work needed. And right now, we're at a time where everyone is short on manpower, us included. And, I'm in the clerk's offices every day. I see that they're short on staffing as well. And what we're requesting will reduce some manpower needs. We face logistical challenges when 95% of our fleet of 14,000 cars are on rent at any given time. Replacing a sticker annually becomes a challenge as our fleet often moves throughout a market of our 90-plus locations. Quite often, we will have a car rented in one part of a city, Louisville, Lexington, wherever we're located, and return in either another city throughout the state or another branch location within that city. The challenge that we see is moving the physical sticker from one location to another. When you talk about the volume of vehicles we have, that's where the issues lie. In some cases, our vehicles, they are completely renewed, but in some cases, vehicles that have been renewed are pulled over for an expired sticker. This causes issues for our customers who are often residents of Kentucky, the police officers involved in unnecessary traffic stops, and for our company as it relates to customer service. In most cases, these customers are local insurance dealership or retail renters and citizens of Kentucky. We are asking for consideration towards implementing some form of a permanent sticker or a fleet plate. Our second area of opportunity comes from the renewals themselves. Along with having a permanent sticker or a permanent plate, many states offer electronic registration renewal for fleet companies. Currently, Kentucky does not do this, but the current process that we deal with is this. We wait to receive an individual card for each vehicle that we have in our fleet. Once we get all those cards, and this past year we estimate that to have been around 15,000 individual cards, just like you would receive at your home for your personal car. We go through those and determine if those vehicles are still in our fleet and they need to be renewed. Once that's complete, we take that to the local clerk's office, and they process renewing all of those plates. It's a very arduous task. This usually takes several weeks for the clerk's office to complete. So we see that this can be facilitated through state-specific software or through a third party such as DealerTrack. If those options are not available, we ask for efficiency within the current process. As it stands now, we receive around 16,000 individual registration cards that are sent to our headquarter office in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then those are forwarded to a Kentucky team, and we renew each vehicle individually. One of the things we were hoping to see is some sort of electronic filing with all renewals, which we could work from and return into one file. Currently, we do receive an Excel spreadsheet from the Department of Transportation for personal property tax only at the beginning of the year, and we go ahead and we pay those personal property taxes off around once we go through and complete the project sometime in March. So we're paying our property taxes about 6 months prior to all of our vehicles actually needing to be renewed. So we're actually paying currently around $4 million, $4.5 million in personal property tax to the state around 6 months prior to the renewal of the vehicle. This helps us alleviate some of the issues that we've had in the past with delinquent taxes and so forth. But what we're feeling is if we can get this all handled under one umbrella, we would have a more efficient way of completing the renewal process.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, again, we want to thank you for your time, but we're willing to invest our personal resources to work with the clerk's office, to work with the members of the committee, and we just want to make this a better process for all and hopefully a more efficient process, whether that means working with a third-party vendor or somebody directly at the state. And at this time, I guess we would like to open it for any questions you all may have.
Thank you, and I would certainly understand your scenario with the vendors and things of that nature. One of the things that I was wondering and mentioned to Co-Chair Howell as we were listening, I would wonder if a fleet plate model could work something similar to how our classic tag model works in Kentucky right now, where you don't have a direct annual renewal. You pay more up front for the plate. You still have to pay the annual ad valorem taxes, but there's not an annual renewal on the direct plate.
Potentially. I mean, again, we're open to any solution there. And I came from Illinois and we had a fleet plate. And one of the challenges with that is we have contracts with local and federal law enforcement. And when you put a unique plate on a vehicle when they're in an undercover operation, it's easier to be made. And so we've found that for those contracts, we prefer a standard looking plate with a sticker that's harder to spot for the bad guys, quite honestly. But we would be open to a plate. We'd prefer it not to cost more, obviously, from a licensing standpoint if we could avoid that. But and that may create more manufacturing challenges. I don't know who the state's vendor is that supplies the plates, but there may be a different design needed there. Where a sticker, currently the stickers are 6-digit alphanumeric tied to the plate number. If it just said, one of his ideas was fleet, right? The state would have the ability to print those letters on that sticker, and it could stay with the plate until somebody sells a car and has to register it in their name, and then they would update the sticker at that time.
So in that scenario, the only thing that you would need is basically, as far as IT goes, just changing the sticker. No new plates, no additional cost, no additional time to create a new plate. We would use the current plate, but just a different sticker that would say fleet or whatever, and we would go from there.
I think Senator Howell has a follow-up. Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman Meredith. To your first point, I mean, if I can understand the law enforcement thing, but I would think most of the time if you're going to get a decal that says fleet, it's probably going to be in a certain color so that law enforcement can recognize it immediately so that you wouldn't have any inadvertent stops. I wouldn't think that would I'm sure if the bad guys figure out what color it is, it's probably not going to really solve the issue that you're talking about. But I guess as far as to keep track of what vehicles are currently being registered in Kentucky so that they don't have to do the annual renewals and that type of thing, would you all be submitting how would the clerks be keeping track of what vehicles were going out of your fleet versus what's coming in for ad valorem tax purposes on an annual basis?
So right now, what we do every month is we send a list of every vehicle that we've removed from our fleet to the clerk's office. We send for property tax reasons. They take them out of our system, they take them out of their system once they're out of our system, and we show backup for that. So we're not asking, we still want to renew these vehicles.
Sure.
We are not asking for anything cost-wise. We want to pay exactly what we're paying. We're not here for anything financially. We're just trying to alleviate the issue of the decal.
So would your idea being that you pay pay a certain amount of dollars per month and then receive a sheet of, say, 500 stickers or 1,000 stickers to put on these vehicles?
Well, the stickers would be initially given to us when we initially get the plate.
Okay.
And then what we would do is, no need to put a new sticker like we currently are doing on the plate. We would just go ahead and we would pay the ad valorem tax and pay for the renewal, and there would be no need for a new sticker. So the money that we're talking about doesn't change. Does that make sense? Are you following me?
Well, it does. I guess I'm just trying to figure out from a law enforcement standpoint, like you say, how would they know that the current fleet sticker or that the fleet sticker that's on the vehicle is current?
Yeah, that's why we were suggesting if we just put fleet, FLEET, 6 alphanumeric digits on the sticker, that would stick out for the police officer.
And the idea being that anything that's in the database registered to our holding company, along with any additions or subtractions we could communicate with the clerk's office, would be current, and we'd be paying on it electronically and electronically renewing those. So the system should be accurate.
Additionally, right now, if we do not, or if we are not up to date with our taxes being paid, we are not allowed to process any new work. So right now, we take anywhere between, on a daily basis, 20 to 100 pieces to a clerk's office daily. And if we were delinquent on a tax, we would not be able to process any of that work.
Okay.
So that would be our catch-all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Follow-up, Senator Howe.
Thank you. Just from my own personal edification standpoint, when you take a vehicle off fleet, then you process it through to one of your resale companies. How does that work? Walk me through that, please.
So when we take a vehicle out of fleet, we typically, most of our vehicles are sold back to dealers. And we wholesale, 97% of our fleet, 95% of our fleet. And they go to dealers' lots, they sell them. It may be in-state, it may be out-of-state. Typically, they are in-state. And then they process everything from there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Representative Bridges, I think, has a question virtually.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple, and I'm going to ask them all at one time, but just for clarity, and you may have covered this, and if you did, I apologize, but where are other state departments on this, like such as transportation and the state police? Have you checked with them, talked to them? And the second question is, are there other states already doing this?
I can answer, I guess, the first part, and I can probably answer both pretty confidently. But yes, there are other states doing this. And in terms of reaching out to the Department of Transportation or the state police, we're in the initial stages of this. I guess we were looking for guidance on who you all would want us to work through and vet, and we're more than willing. When I say we're willing to invest time and resources, we certainly are, because it would be a huge efficiency for us from a staffing standpoint and just overall procedurally.
So as far as the second part of your question, many states are doing this already. Many states have been doing this for a decade or two. It's something that we are looking forward to. It's something that has gone well through other states. Surrounding states are doing this. Indiana just recently started doing this. But states throughout the country, Connecticut, Florida, several states. Illinois, yes. And they've been doing it for quite a long time.
One more question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Representative.
And the other, I do something just sort of crossed my mind. I appreciate what you're saying as far as the tags and keeping them inconspicuous so that people can't target them, whether it be criminals being able to, when it's rented to people, or I know that just in the past few years or so, you've started removing the stickers that identify your cars as being rental cars, so people on vacation aren't targeted by criminals or anything, knowing that they're from out of state and not aware. But how hard would it be for criminals or regular people that have moving violations, anything, to be able to get that back, to be able to identify them if all the plates are just in one big lump sum? And would they have to go to Enterprise or to the rental company, and then they would release who had the car at the time? Or would there be any other additional problems, or would it be similar to what you already have in place?
I work on the risk management side, and so we have a lot of long-standing relationships with law enforcement, and we work very closely with them when there is an issue that they've run a tag or somebody has been spotted in one of our vehicles with criminal activity. We always disclose that to them, provided they give us the right paperwork or documentation. So that would not change in this scenario.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Flannery.
Thank you. I have a few questions, if I can ask them at once. Representative Bridges asked some questions that I had also. But in the other states that do this, how is fleet defined? And then secondly, does this apply to only rental companies, or can it also apply to pre-owned car dealers and even new dealers that have a very large inventory that would qualify as a fleet?
Well, that would be on the legislature to define what a fleet is. We can certainly get language over to you all to have a starting place from, but that would have to be negotiated through the bill process. In terms of dealerships, typically dealerships will use dealer tags on their vehicles. They're not actually a fleet. They're inventory in that scenario, so I don't know that this would affect them. But other companies certainly that would, I look at like Drexler Plumbing has probably a pretty large van pool that might be able to benefit from this efficiency, where they're not renewing 100 cars at a clerk's office and clogging up the line for the person that has one transaction to conduct.
Representative Flannery, you got any follow-ups on that?
I'm good.
Any other questions from members of the committee for this part of the panel? Seeing none, thank you all for being here and your presentation. We will move into our second group today, which are the representatives from Carvana. You all are on remotely, it looks like. If you could introduce yourselves for the record, and then you can proceed with your presentation.
Sounds great. I'm Audrey Jackson, Manager of Government Affairs for the Southeast. And I know I have two other of my colleagues that will likely want to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Dory Guest. I'm an analyst on Carvana's Regulatory Operations Support Team, and I help oversee our operations in the Midwest and sometimes in Kentucky and the Tennessee area as well.
And my name is Russell Dizon. I'm also an analyst on the Regulatory Operations Support Team, and I cover the Mid-South states for Carvana.
Wonderful. Well, I'll start. Co-chairs Hal and Meredith, as well as members of the task force, thank you for the opportunity to present today. We're excited to be with you guys, and thank you for the virtual option that you provided us. I want to start by quickly introducing who we are, and then what we might be able to share with you all with working on online used car sales throughout the country. We thank you for this opportunity to share our expertise working in numerous states with various clerks, DMVs, BNVs, and the nuances of every state. And our goal is making the car buying experience better for the people of Kentucky. As they introduce themselves with me, Dory Guest and Russell, they really are the experts that work with customers and clerks and regulators daily to make sure that our process with each state is done correctly and timely for our customers. And I thought it would be very helpful to have them, especially on any questions you guys may have, as their expertise will be really helpful. Additionally, Matt Niehaus, who we work with in Kentucky, is in person with you as well today. Appreciate you working with him and helping us be able to be a part of this process. As we follow the work of this committee, we're very pleased to hear the discussions thus far and excited to serve as a resource, however the task force sees fit. Also excited to see Enterprise with you all today. I know we've worked with them in other states and enjoyed the opportunity to work with them again, hopefully here in Kentucky. So the slide here about e-commerce, just to tell you a little bit about ourselves. As you all know, e-commerce has been around more than 30 years. Business to business e-commerce existed before that. Before even the internet, folks were buying things from catalogs. Amazon, a company I know that Kentucky knows well, is 25. And as much as many of us, I'm sure myself included, a little worried to admit that age, given that we remember when they started selling books, but people love online shopping. And with COVID-19, quarantines, contactless commerce, online shopping, and online services is really the future, or it's likely just now. What we do and what people like from online shopping and why they choose online stores versus traditional stores is access to a larger marketplace, hassle-free pricing, and an easy buying process, which I think is where this task force really comes in. Go ahead to the next slide, Dory, if you don't mind. Carvana was founded about 8 years ago, been in Kentucky since 2016. We were founded on this simple idea to improve the process of how people buy cars. The research we saw, few people liked the current process. Many people wanted more convenience. They wanted more time to test drive the car, and people wanted a low pressure opportunity to think about financing. That's what Carvana has done. That's our model, 100% online at your time and delivered to your driveway, or you can pick up at one of our vending machines, which you may have seen some of our commercials of those. We're moving the industry forward towards a more new standard. We think things like a 7-day return policy, quality photos, and simple, convenient services are good, not just for us, but for the entire industry. That's how companies should think. That's how we believe regulators should think, how we can enable the best possible experience for people. Our mission is fix what is broken, put the consumer in control, and make their experience top-notch. Our overall motto, and one that I really like as a mom myself, but the next customer could be our mom. What we give consumers is confidence, convenience, and care. This is what we provide, and I'll break down these a little bit further and quickly for you. On the confidence side, we provide quality acquisition. We don't take cars that have been in accidents or with structural damage. We perform a 150-point inspection, really best in class, only second to Acura. And if you don't trust our report, in addition to our own report, we provide a Carfax report with every one of our vehicles. And I have to note, with the 150-point inspection, covers everything from Bluetooth technology to treads on the tires and brake pads. Our folks shop online. They see 360-degree images, each marked with special features. And they also highlight imperfections that exist, scratches, scuffs, etc. They're all pointed out so the customer can really feel what the car is like before even sitting in the driver's seat. On the convenience front, no commission sales. And if you're not familiar with buying something online, we even have advocates that can help you through the process. Just call us up on the phone. For care, I think this is probably the most important for us. We have a 7-day money-back guarantee. If you don't like the car, the cup holder size, or it doesn't fit in your garage, whatever the reason, you have 7 days to test drive. And if you don't like it, call us, message us, and we'll come pick it up. So our headquarters is located in Tempe, Arizona. As you see on this map, we're located throughout the country. And as of last week, serving 305 markets nationwide. We have 5 markets in Kentucky that we serve: Louisville, Lexington, Bowling Green, Elizabethton, and Owensboro. We have 31 vending machines nationwide, 15 inspection centers, and many logistic hubs throughout the country. In your region, we employ over 600. We have 2 locations in Kentucky, including the vending machine, which, if you haven't seen, I hope you've seen. It's off of I-64 in Louisville. We also have one other site in Kentucky that helps with our logistics and delivery to customers. We sold 3,000 cars in 2020 in Kentucky. And from January 1 to July 30 in 2021, we've sold just shy of 2,500, well on our way to doubling our 2020 sales. And I believe this is a testament that many like the online buying process, and anything we can do to help make that process simpler for folks, we want to be part of. We are proud of the feedback that we get from our customers. We far exceed the national dealer average in third-party developed rating systems. We recently found that 80% of our customers would recommend us to friends and family. We're really proud of these reviews, and it's probably our proudest achievement. But I have to note, I personally was a Carvana customer. My father thought I was crazy. I'm from Virginia, buying something online, but I was a Carvana customer 4 years before working for them, and still today drive that car. Consumers and dealers, I think we all agree that buying a car online is more efficient, it's streamlined and satisfying. And Cox Automotive in 2020 confirmed that in their study, which I think they shared with you at your all's last meeting. We're really excited what Cox Automotive is showing as far as stats and results, and what Carvana is doing in playing that role. We're excited to be doing that. As we see more deals online and the volume of sales growing without proper improvements in the state processes, customer experience and pressure on these state systems will rise, as many of you all saw in 2020. We appreciate this task force for undertaking the idea of modernizing these processes. Our various teams work daily with clerks and DMVs in states throughout the region. In Kentucky specifically, we have great interactions with the county clerk's offices. Our local teams often visit, likely monthly, and they provide us the estimated amount of tags that we expect, temporary tags that we expect to use that month with our sales. In our experience, states with more digital access for consumers, the customers tend to be more pleased with state and local officials, as well as the car industry. A few of these examples we'd like to share from our interactions in states that have recently moved to more modern system. We would love to make this process more streamlined for Kentucky consumers. A few of these examples of changes other states have recently made that we've seen to improve the process, specifically when it comes to delays, as I believe that is one of your all's main objectives. Also, though, these also really have improved customer satisfaction. So the first one, many states have moved VIN inspections away from already understaffed and overworked sheriff's departments. Relieving this task from their office allows resources from those departments to be redirected to other public safety needs within the community. We know there's a lot of them. In Ohio, Indiana, and many other states, they've given licensed dealers the authority to inspect a VIN. This improves delays with title and registration dramatically and allows dealers to perform a service for their customer. A second improvement we've seen is granting licensed dealerships the ability to apply for title transfer on behalf of the customer. This ensures that the title is successfully transferred to the new owner. This also supports lenders by ensuring their lien is correctly and promptly recorded on the title. This process can be lengthy for financial institutions and often very stressful for the consumer. Third, we've seen states moving to 100% digital vehicle processes. Many states have moved away from traditional wet signatures on documents, moved away from using standard mail, using email and other digital transfers, moved away from paper titles and registration. Ohio, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and many others have moved about 100% or nearly 100% in online transactions. Some even include home printing of registration and home printing of temporary tags and provide, quality paper at time to do that. Additionally, requesting permanent tags, paying fees, all of that is done digitally now in many states. Some states have even looked at extending the 30-day registration deadlines to 90 days, giving agencies and the consumer plenty of time to finalize and correct any errors during the process, and allows them to legally be driving the car. And lastly, as we saw with the plummeting delays in 2020 and the COVID shutdowns, overburdened vendors and systems can cause delays and crashes to the system. In states like Indiana and Ohio, dealers have access to multiple vendors. I think a few were mentioned today, DealerTrack, others, for vendors to choose to assist in completing their deals. This prevents delays from consumers as well as state and local governments. I believe this committee is looking at taking some form of an adoption of an Ohio model. Many of the changes you see that we've suggested come from the Ohio model or very similar. And we're happy to speak in more detail on that if that would be helpful. I know Dory on this call is from or does work primarily in this region and covers Ohio. But specifically, we have found that these 4 areas cause the most delays and frustration for customers and dealers. Carvana has changed the way the industry looks at online sales. We think that that's good for the consumer, and it didn't happen overnight. So we understand changes take some time. Our teams at Carvana work daily, like I said, with clerks, motor vehicles, and states throughout the region, and we will work with whatever regulators decide. But from our experience, a state that moved to more of a digital access for consumers tends to find a more pleased constituent. And I know that many of you strive to please constituents and looking for making their lives easier in Kentucky. Again, we'll open it up to the three of us and Nat, who's in the room, if we can answer any questions, how the process works. We've also included on this slide our emails as well as my cell phone. If you think of anything after the fact that we can do, we would like to be a resource for the state and for this task force. So thanks again for the time. Really appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys today.
Thank you very much. Do I hear questions from members of the committee, either in the room or virtually at this time? Central Webb.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For Carvana, I would ask the employee 600, what's the average salary of your company here?
I don't know an average. I don't know if Dory or Russell, you have that, but I do know that our various lot attendants, which would be most of the folks that work at the lot attendants, start around 15 an hour, 15 to 17 an hour. And I know that some of our folks who, what we call customer advocates, they're out doing the deliveries. They'd also be based out of that vending machine. I think they're in about the same pay range as well. I could certainly look at an average though for you, if that would be helpful.
You know, that's the A&R person in me as to the state bottom line and the quality of life for our employees. I'd like some more information on that if you could get it to us. And secondly, like in the model where I represent some car dealers and I know a little about the process, but about fraud, like on the Ohio model, I mean, what's the safeguards for fraud? And what's the penalties?
You know, I don't know if Dory has that answer. That would maybe something that we probably should look back into on that, and we could probably look at that. I will say on the VIN inspections, you know, dealers across the country have been doing those, and in our experience, if we find any of those things, you know, we are looking at bigger problems if we're seeing something in that era. But Dory, do you have any information working in Ohio on that?
I not in terms of specifically fraud. I am, to repeat Audrey's point, it's really if they're a licensed dealer and they've been entrusted with a dealership license in that state. Indiana, in my experience, Indiana and Ohio, they have granted those licensed dealers the ability to physically inspect the VIN, the odometer, whatever is required of that VIN inspection form, record that and sign off on it as an inspector, on an agent of the dealership. So in this case, Carvana. In terms of how the state protects against fraud in that instance, I can only imagine that they would, if they are looking into an investigation of a consumer complaint or something that just was, you know, due to criminal activity, then they would reach out to the dealership to determine, you know, after looking at the paperwork, determine what happened.
And that would, my question is also like to protect the dealer and what things we would have to have in place on the layers if we change that process. But thank y'all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for the question.
Questions from other members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you all very much. We will move on now to our friends from the Kentucky County Clerks Association for their presentation on the vehicle portion, and I think there are details of their field trip that they made as well. So if you all would introduce yourselves for the record, and then you may proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. I'm Tabitha Clemens. I'm the county clerk in Grant County.
And I'm Chris Cockrell. I'm Montgomery County Clerk and current president of the KCCA. Thank you all for having us here today. Thank you all for the presentations that went before us. We'd like to go over what we have brought with you today and then maybe address a few concerns and issues with them if it so suits the committee. So just kind of going over some of the things since our last time with you all here. We did take a trip to Ohio to kind of look at the model that they are running under and give you our thoughts on what we saw. A snapshot of our presentation on our first slide, if you'll look, we did a survey to the county clerks, and we had 70 participants dial in and give us some response from that, which is a pretty good chunk of our association. We do want to touch on our Ohio field trip and what we saw and what we liked and the positive things we've seen and some of the concerns that we have with that model. And then, of course, our thoughts on modernization and staffing. But if you look, one of the questions brought before us was kind of a issue with the fee pool, not saying necessarily a fee pool, but some of the misconception. And if you'll see out of the survey, we had 51 clerks in our association that do not fee pool, which is to say that we run our offices on the fees that we collect. We're not supported by our fiscal court. What we do is we make our payroll, we do our supplies, we do what we do on the fees that we collect. And with that model, it has been very successful. I think if you'll see throughout our state, a lot of clerks do a very good job with the resources they have at this time.
So we want to definitely discuss the field trip to Ohio. For some who went on the field trip, it was a little bit of a lengthy trip. Some of them met in my county and we crossed the river together. I think they're still getting over my driving a little bit. So, but we do appreciate Clermont County. For those of you who may not know exactly about Clermont County, there are over 200,000 residents in Clermont County. And we didn't want to go to Hamilton, which is the bulk of Cincinnati. We wanted to find a county that would kind of be able to sit down with us and take time and answer our questions. We felt like Hamilton County would be too fast-paced for us. So we had a great experience there. They were very knowledgeable about how their office runs. We went to the titling office, which is considered the DMV in Ohio. So Ohio has two different scopes of services for constituents. They have a titling office, and then they have a registration or plate office. That's very different than what we do here in Kentucky. And we hear that from our constituents, especially those of us who live on the northern or border of Ohio. We hear that a lot from people who come across the river and live in Kentucky, that we don't have to go to another office after this. There's not anywhere else to go. We have everything we need here at one office. And that's what we want to continue here in Kentucky. We think that the model of getting your title and your plates in the same location is very important. Some of the things that we did enjoy was the title printing on site. So a lot of effort and workload and cost in Kentucky is with mail that gets returned to our offices. We have stacks of titles that come back where people order duplicate titles or they've processed their title for the first time and they don't make it to the address that the consumer or the customer gave us at the time of the titling, which means that they get returned to our office. But they don't just come straight back to our office. They go to Frankfurt first. Frankfurt has to sort those to the county in which the title was ordered, and then they're sent to the county clerk's office via the mail. Then we sort them in my county. We sort them alphabetically and put them in a drawer. Our drawer is always full of those titles that get returned. I'm sure Chris's and many other clerks would say the same thing. This title printing would completely eliminate all of that in our office. We would be able, if you, or Representative Meredith, if you forgot where you put your title and you're going to sell a car, you can come in and we can print that title on demand at that moment. You're no longer waiting for it to be processed in the batch system. Printed that evening in a warehouse, mailed out the next day, and then the 3 to 5 business days that we tell people it normally takes to get that. We saw mail delays, especially during this last election. A lot of titles were in those delays as well. It wasn't just other pieces of mail. So from the security standpoint of this, to kind of address some of what Senator Webb was talking about with Carvana, we were really intrigued about the security piece of the printing of titles. They have the titles pre-printed in a numerical order in a sequencing system. And then when the title is printed out of their system, that sequencing number, their system assigns that sequencing number, much like we assign title numbers. So the system assigns the number. It is also pre-printed on the title, and there's a barcode on the title that has that information there as well that's printed. So the security of the title would be in place. The inventory would be much like what Clerks experienced with decals before we went to printed decals. We had pre-printed decals that we were responsible to keep inventory of, just like we're responsible to keep inventory of plates. So the convenience is the selling point of this. The convenience to our customers, to our dealers who need to turn titles around quicker, that it would be a huge benefit. And then, of course, the mail and staffing cost. The electronic system that the dealers participate in Ohio, they have multiple vendors. It's up to the dealer to decide which vendor they would want to select. And then there's also a state-ran system that is no cost to the dealers, from what we were told. The vendor participated electronic scanning systems is something that the dealer pays per piece to scan in to the system. So for a vehicle that I would buy, they would pay for that packet to be sent in, much like what we see on the e-recording world. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Chris for a minute.
Yep, just going over how that electronic submission of documents from the dealers is much like what we're seeing now from our realtors as far as e-recording. And the discussion among the clerks is something that we are very much open to have a conversation with this. The e-recording with real estate has become I think a really good added value to our offices. And I can see as the dealer, such as Dealer Track, if we decide to go with that model, I think that would be a huge asset for not just the dealers, but for the clerks and the process that we do their work. So we are open for that. We must keep the current model of working being completed in the county of the dealership. And that's something that we've talked before, is that the way the KRS is stated now, anybody that buys a vehicle, if you go to a different county, that work is either processed in the dealership's home county or on the purchaser's county. The financial impact, if we adjust that, could be devastating to some of our smaller counties. I think that would be something, if we move away from that, could be a fiscal negative impact for a lot of our smaller counties. Rejections and turnarounds much quicker with electronic filing. Once we get that in our office, the way we look at that changes dramatically. We can see that on a screen with the Dealer Track model. We can quickly make adjustments or return that rejection to the dealer, and they can make the corrections and send it right back to us. CAVIS, obviously we're still waiting on CAVIS. That is something that we desperately need to get that going, and I know they're making strides in that area. But one thing that we will need is kind of a portal to tie in with Dealer Track, and I don't think that's going to be a heavy lift. I think that portion added to CAVIS is not going to be a really big issue. Titling is the DMV's only focus in Ohio. Clerks are very, very knowledgeable of what we do, and we are vastly spread out, but we are equipped at this time to handle that kind of workload. A DMV model, I don't think we want our state to go on that. I think we can work together on some of the modernization of what we're talking about today in the meetings we've had in the prior to, but I don't think a DMV model is something that the constituents in our state want. You hear that even on movies and television, and you hear that from constituents from other places throughout the nation. It's not a good model. People don't want to sit in line. People don't want to waste a day going to a DMV. So I think we need to keep our plates in the clerk's office. the titling, I think, would be a huge asset if we can see that roll into our office. I think it would be a great plus. If we'll go to the next slide, kind of show you what we've seen as far as dealer turnaround time. And I didn't.
Chris, let me hold you up for just a second.
Sure.
Co-Chair Hal had a question that was pertaining to some of those last slides, and he wanted to get those before we moved on to the next.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. It helps me to keep everything in
Understand.
its right box before we move on. I've got a couple of questions. One, you were talking about the registration with the online registration from dealers. I know maybe it's because in Kentucky we are very county-centric. Unless you're from Louisville or Lexington, everybody else lives in a county. And then some of the things that I hear talked about, like in my area, if people come to Callaway County or McCracken County to buy a vehicle, then it's a lot of times registered there, and they want to have their car to have Hickman County on it. It's kind of an associational thing. Is there a way to set this up from an e-recording standpoint to where the dealer license it with your home county?
That can be done now. The customer needs to request that from the dealer, and say that they want it to be sent to, whichever the county that they live in versus the county where the dealer is located. Most dealers do comply with that. I know that there's mistakes from time to time that it doesn't get sent to the right place. We've experienced that. But at this point, it's just a sticker over the plate that designates the county. So they would go to Hickman and get the sticker.
Right. But if you are knowledgeable and know to ask or care to ask or think to ask at the time. But it seems to be from a dealer standpoint now, if I were a dealer, I would do the same thing. If I'm going to one particular county clerk, it's going to be my home clerk because that's where my relationships are, and that's the closest one to me. Is there a way was there anything that you saw that would make that an easier feed? I guess at that point, it's just a drop-down box with all the counties, like anything else that we've got.
Right. Within the program that they had in Ohio, we didn't see that. They have a competitive model in Ohio where the counties are competing against each other. So, you can do business with any clerk. So there was in the Claremont County Clerk's office, they were processing titles that was like up in the northern part, like close to Ohio University, for a dealership up there that they've built a relationship with. So feasibly for a fee county, that's why we started with the fee pooling situation. With feed offices, that would be very difficult for especially our smaller counties who are losing population over in eastern Kentucky and the western part of the state. We just don't want to be in competition with each other. That's why we feel like the current model still works.
And I will say this, because they are a DMV, that competitiveness works. But because the county clerks in Kentucky, we need to work a working relationship with each other on elections, on recording, on voter registration. There's so many facets that we need that to stay a good relationship with other county clerks. And when you get into the competitiveness of a DMV, it really is going to tear down a lot of that goodwill between clerks.
Now, we do allow a competitive model with regard to registration renewals, because you can register. You don't have to do your renewal in the county that you reside in.
No.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can renew in any county, whether you reside there or whether you don't. I do it every year.
I can't say that that's the way we normally do business. I think most clerks recognize that there are situations such as, for your all's example, you all obviously don't live, a lot of you don't live in Franklin County, but I'm sure that since you all work here, there may be a situation.
I don't renew in Franklin County either. So.
Right.
But I think that's a practice. I mean, I know in the initial titling stage that it's county of dealer or county of purchaser, but I think general rule is any county clerk will take a renewal on a registration, whether it's in their county of residence or not. That has been the practice that I've seen throughout my time of doing renewals individually, and since I've been in the General Assembly too.
can't argue against that. Let me put it that way. I can't argue against that.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bridges.
Yeah, I think we changed some of that when we did the perfection of title and liens back year before last. They had allowed them to apply in any county, and then it didn't interfere with the lien holding and all that. So you are correct on that, to where you can renew in any county. But just want to make a point of clarification. Sorry to interrupt.
I do.
Oh, back to Senator Howell now.
Thank you. Tabitha, you were talking about the stock printing of titles.
Mm-hmm.
Those unique numbers that are assigned to each title, is that per county, or does that just out of a statewide database for titling?
My understanding from Ohio's perspective is it's statewide inventory. So it's not county specific until the inventory is discharged to your county. And then within Claremont County, there's 3 offices. So they have to report which office gets which batch of titles. And then that batch is depleted, and then they go get from their centralized office more. They order more titles in, and then those are assigned as they're getting inventory, much like plates. Okay. So currently, if a box of plates are sent to Grant County, we are then responsible, and we have to track the inventory and the inventory system that, especially the new one that just went live. We're responsible for those plates once they get on site, and we have accepted them into our system. So I think the title the title stock would be much the same.
Forgive me, I have to ask these examples in ways that I understand them. So the analogy I'm thinking of, if Matt has a title company in his group that has 6 different offices and they're cutting checks out of it, they just have blank check stock, and each time one of the offices prints a check, it prints the next available check in sequence. Is that kind of how the titling part works then?
So the title number is printed on the title. Mm-hmm. And then the sequence batch in the system would print that exact same number. So then there's the verification of keeping it straight. Okay. If there's one missing, that's part, like we experience that now with plates, especially during that transition of the flat plate that I know Representative Meredith just loves. But when we first went to that model, there was some issues with the plates not being in sequence. Mm-hmm. So we had to let inventory at transportation know that we were missing certain plates. I think the title stock, we would check much the same. Check those numbers, and then if the system is having an issue and not printing the correct number with the correct title, then we have an issue there as well. And they can reset that number in their system. We did ask that.
That was kind of my follow-up question, is how do they match this for audit purposes?
They're verifying them, and then there's also a barcode on there that they're scanning before they give it to the customer to verify that yes, they did check the stock number and the printed title number to correspond that inventory code. So
great, thank you.
You're welcome.
You all proceed, Chris, with the next slide.
Sure. And the next slide is kind of a lead up for the following slide, but I did want to didn't mean to contradict our earlier presentation, but if you look at this on our turnaround time for dealer work, the great majority is 1 to 2 days. We've got over 35 dealers in Montgomery County, and we can get the work processed in a matter of 2 days tops. And I think that just kind of gives an example of the quality of deputies that our offices have. They're very knowledgeable, experienced, and efficient at what they do. So I think if you look, 3 to 5 would be a stretch for most, or for some. But for most people, we're getting the work done very efficiently in a matter of a couple of days.
And to kind of go off of what Chris said there, when we saw rejections in the Claremont County office, it was really interesting. She rejected something while we were sitting there, and before we left, which, we were there for probably an hour and a half with her, watching her process titles, some of the rejections were already returned. So what that does is it improves not only the turnaround time, we don't have work sitting in a folder, but it also lets that deputy recall exactly what was wrong with that title. Much like on the land records side, we have those checklists. Many of you who practice have seen our long checklist where we reject something because there's not a preparation statement or a signed preparation statement. And then when you send it back, you don't send it back with that rejection slip. So then we have to go back through the complete document. When it's almost instant or within a few hours, we remember why we rejected it, and we can process the documents a little more efficiently. So we did want to ask our clerks statewide what they felt like the estimated time of rejection and corrected auto dealer work was by county clerks, like what we're seeing, how much are we rejecting. We had some clerks who don't process enough title work to really relay an answer to us, so that's what the other category is here. So 16% of those who answered back to our survey said at least 3 to 4 titles out of every 10 are rejected or require some sort of correction. And then 72% said 1 to 2 titles out of every 10 are rejected or need a correction. So that's kind of what we're seeing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. But what I found really interesting about this was we asked them to give us some examples of what they're seeing and how they're correcting it. And a lot of clerks went away from the model. When I started 7 years ago, the model at my office and many across the state was to put it in a folder, put a sticky note on it, or put a rejection slip and leave it until they picked it up. I didn't think that was very efficient, especially when we're talking about maybe they left off a birth month, and that's something we can pick up the phone or send an email and say, hey, this deal, you left off a birth month. Can you get that to me? And put it at the bottom of the stack, and probably by the time you get to the bottom, they've got back with you. And that's what over 50% of our clerks are doing on a regular basis. They're calling, they're emailing, they're trying to find out this information so that they can process the work without putting it in a folder and setting it to the side. The model of allowing them to electronically submit only increases the efficiency because it's back and forth so quickly. So it's something that we're absolutely willing to talk about. When rejecting work, we're not just rejecting it. This was really interesting to me that some dealers were saying they just reject it and we don't know why. When we were having conversations, most clerks are pointing out the reasons for the rejections, so trying to give the title clerks as much information to get the work processed as possible. And then we wanted to know, what are some things that we're doing in the realm of customer protection, and how are we working to make sure that our customers' information's protected, that the vehicle process is protected when we are processing work, as well as what are we doing to protect dealers? There are partners in this. So many clerks are reaching out to dealers when customers are not coming in to complete transfers. So work sitting at our office, this happens a lot when folks buy vehicles over in Ohio or Indiana. The dealership mails or overnights the work to us, and it sits in a drawer, and the customer doesn't come in, which means the lien didn't get filed, which means the temp tag ran out. So we're communicating back with those dealers on a regular basis. Some have, they do it weekly. They go through their drawer weekly, some bi-weekly, some monthly, but they are communicating back to those dealers. This is something that we do in my county. We have pending lien protection communication. Anytime that a pending lien is placed on a title, whether it's in my county or in another county, we get a 15-day report. If it's associated with a dealership or a bank in my county, I'm communicating with that institution to let them know that their lien has not been filed within the first 15 days. They have 22 days to get the lien filed, so it gives them a few days to get that before the title would print without a satisfied lien. Mileage corrections is something that we regularly look at. If the wrong mileage is wrote on a title, we have to get that corrected. Title work and title lien statements don't match. The vehicle's not the same, or they put on the title work that it's one lien holder and the title lien statement says something else. The dealership's tax amounts do not match. They're incorrect, making the customer either overpay or not pay enough. And a lot of times we see trade-in credit left off. So they have a trade-in. Some folks, when they're doing that paperwork, they don't list the trade-in amount, so we can't credit them that amount of tax. So those are things that we're catching on a regular basis that were communicated with us over and over in our survey. Anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. As far as the consumer protection side of what we do, Carvana gave a great presentation. I think they have a great sales model on how they do their sales. However, it is concerning the direction that this modernization may take if we move away from the clerks being the protection advocate for this online. I think their sales model, it highlights the lack of oversight on the protection side of this. And government, our role is to provide services, but also to protect the people that we serve. So I would just caution this committee on how we proceed, that we don't lose sight of the protection side of this. So I just wanted to add that to it. I think our clerks do a great job, just as she's given many examples, but just thinking about the way Carvana is doing their sales, great sales, but we need to be very vigilant on how we protect our people that we serve. One thing that we did bring into this, and it's just a little off topic, but because we are talking about a major modernization to our office, is the state issue identification card. 98% of the clerks that we surveyed feel that our constituents will be best served with driver's license or a state issue ID, which meets the requirement for voting, to be brought back to the local level. This is a concern that we have been talking about within the Clerks Association. We've started a discussion with State Board of Election, also KYTC, and the Secretary of State's office. There's some ongoing concerns about voter registration from the regional sites. There's been some miscommunication locally with our circuit clerks since Motor Voter has started, but we were always able to work across the hall with our circuit clerks and adjust those. Now that those moved to a regional site, there's concern about the training that's being done with the people that are doing this. There's also concern about little grandmother having to travel 3 counties over to get an ID to vote. Our law is a great law to have voter ID in place, but having that at such a distance may be an issue that we may end up in litigation with. So we want you all to be aware of, and we want to go on record by saying that we need to make sure that we don't pass up this when we're looking at modernization. A lot of clerks 4 or 5 years ago were opposed to this, but I think that the temperature has changed in the Clerks Association. The culture has shifted, and we would be willing to sit down and discuss maybe bringing that back to our offices. So we just wanted to bring that.
Senator Hale?
I'm so glad you asked. On this, outside of sometimes anything we change, there's pushback to change just because it's changed. But I think with a lot of our regional structuring, I think there's some very legitimate questions to the regional licensing centers. My question is a little more basic for the inner workings of the clerk's offices. Is this one of those situations where you could increase accuracy and it'd probably be easier on most of your offices if you did the driver's license registration yourself too? Because it take it to be one-stop shop. For years, I've always wondered why in the world it was in the circuit clerk's offices anyway, since you handle voting, you handle car registration, everything else that deals with a driver's license happens in your offices, except for the actual driver's license issuance. So is that a situation just from a clerk standpoint where it would probably be easier and more functional if you took on this responsibility of issuing driver's licenses? It seems counterintuitive that we add something else to your plate, but it actually makes it easier and better for you in the process.
I would agree wholeheartedly. Now, there are counties, I'm sure, larger counties that may have some issue. Smaller counties may have a few issues with space. But I would say, by and large, the majority of the constituents would be better served. And for my personal opinion, it's common sense to bring, like you said, everybody associates us with motor vehicle. I would say up to 30% of our phone calls are about driver's license. So we could go ahead and take the next step and going ahead and assisting someone that would call if that was in our office.
So I'm going to...
Let me ask a real quick follow-up
Sure.
on that too, Tabitha. And just with regard to, I'm trying to figure out the wording specifically here as it's worded in here. Are you saying non-real ID compliant IDs, or are we talking about real ID compliant driver's licenses as well?
So what was asked in our survey was about Kentucky driver's license and state-issued IDs, which is not real ID compliance. So, I'm not saying that there wouldn't be an appetite to have a conversation. But I think what I would be remiss if we didn't go back a little bit. When this idea was first presented to county clerks many years ago, we were told we had 2 weeks to make a decision. The funding model was not there. AOC was still getting a bulk of the funding. It was basically an unfunded mandate on counties, and we all know how county government feels about that. So you can't look at something that we've never had in our offices before and expect us to make a 2-week decision. This is just us opening a door saying, we'd like to have this conversation. We know right now from the counties that are already experiencing the regional model that there's issues with voter registration. We are very concerned about that. In fact, I've already wrote a press release for our newspaper in regards to when our county, we're still one of the last ones that have not went. But when we do, communicating with my constituents saying, please make sure that you, after you get your real ID or you've updated your state ID at a regional office, you come back and either check with us or check online about your voter registration status. We've heard, several different scenarios about how that's taking place. We had county clerks who have went and got their real IDs. They weren't asked about voter registration at all. So if you've updated your address, what that means for folks in this room and for those of us that are elected is that you have constituents that may not be eligible to vote because their address isn't correct on election day. They've decided to change their party when they updated their ID, but we don't get record of a physical card change, which is required that we have to have that. So there's just a lot of concerns around the situation.
And I'm going to give you a snowball's version of that. In the small county that I grew up in, and is my home county, Edmonson County. If you look at the zip codes inside of that county, there are about, I'm going to say 5 or 6 zip codes. Of those, 2 are Warren County bulk zip codes. 1 is a Barron County bulk zip code. 1 is a Grayson County bulk zip code. 1 is a Hart County bulk zip code. And I think 2 are just Edmonson County zip codes. And so in a county that borders a lot of other counties and is a small county, that voter registration piece is a huge problem coming out of these regional centers, because if they see a Park City address, they think that's Barron County because Park City, the city, is in Barron County. They see a Bowling Green address, they think Warren County. Mm-hmm. They see a Caneyville address, they think Grayson County. And we have seen that in that county, and like I said, especially those that have counties bordering them on all sides inside the state and are small, where you have those zip code overlaps, that becomes a huge problem.
Yeah, you opened the door for me. That's why we as clerks have been requesting statewide GIS mapping for a good while now. The current executive director for the State Board of Elections, Jared Deering, has been a huge advocate for this as well. it would eliminate a lot of problems, because then we could ping addresses. We have very similar situation. I have a small city, Corinth, touches 4 counties, and every year at election time, the 4 clerks that are affected are sending information back and forth about certification, about people who have filed for office for that city. Tax rates become an issue with the city because the city is in 4 counties. So it's a constant trying to keep up with. And when they add homes, it only makes the situation worse.
And I'm not sure that, I know motor voter is meant to be a convenience type situation, but considering our movement to the regional driver's licensing process, if we don't do something to make a change like you all are talking about opening the door to discuss, I'm not sure motor voter is a feasible program going forward into the future because of the kinks and the problems that it creates. Mm-hmm. Because your driver's license is obviously very important. It's your primary form of identification. But if it somehow is going to disqualify you from being able to vote because you go and they automatically change you, that's not a good situation either. And I think that's something we have to think about, not really the purview of this task force, but I think it's an important issue to discuss because it does chip around the edges of some of the things we're talking about.
And that's the reason we wanted to bring it before you all today. And I will say this, we want to see the regional sites succeed. I think there's a lot of resource, a lot of time, a lot of effort by a lot of stakeholders to see that. But we want to be at the table, and we want you all to be aware of the problems we're already seeing. And if we can help solve these, we're willing partners to step up and say, hey, let us help.
So just to go back over some of the things with modernization, we absolutely are willing to discuss and work with CAVIS and those vendors and regarding electronic title submission on titling work coming into our offices. Electronic titling is a different subject that we haven't really spoke a lot about, but this is where the state is actually holding an electronic title on your behalf. So you come into the clerk's office and you are registering a vehicle for the first time. You have the option in Ohio to have a printed title or to have an electronically held title if there is no lien. If there is a lien, then it is only an electronically held title. You no longer get a printed title with a lien on the front of it. So that's a discussion that could be moving forward from here. And then we've had this discussion briefly with some of you in regards to centralized lien filing and how that would work. Instead of it being county specific, it would be a centralized lien system within CAVIS, where if you're doing business in Edmonson County, but the person you're doing business with actually resides in Barron, it just gets filed in the state system. That comes down financially for some clerks, is where that ends up, is from a financial standpoint, how do they get made whole with their fees? And then also when it comes to the release of those documents, who has the authority to release the lien? Is it still the county where the person resides, or is it going to any county clerk? And if there's an issue with the county who released it, how do we track that county? How do we track who released it is basically what it comes down to. So there's some concerns there about consumer protection and also protection for lien holders when it comes to centralized liens. We did some interesting information about staff experience, and I'll let Chris speak to that.
Yeah, and it goes back to, once again, consumer protection. I think if you look at our data here, a lot of our clerks have multiple years of employment, and by that they've got institutional knowledge. At the state level, a lot of what we're dealing with is we're seeing a lot of temp services come in to fill some of the gaps that they're facing. And I think this data shows how valuable our clerks are to our Commonwealth. Our clerks make a career. They take pride in what they do. Our deputies stay and make a living doing something they love to do, and that serve our community. And I think that shows very well in this data that our clerks, we value our deputy clerks, the people that work for us and under us and help come alongside us to serve the state of Kentucky, and they have stayed with us for decades. And I think if we look at maybe how we change in this modernization, I think it bodes well that we realize that these people are doing a really good work. Let's facilitate some change for them. Let's make things easier for the people. We've got a great opportunity to make significant changes in the way our offices do our business with our communities. And it's with your all's help and with our dealers association, the realtors, the lending institutions, and this task force. I'm excited and encouraged, and I think that if we can work together, we can make a drastic change for the betterment of our state.
Members of the committee in the room or participating virtually have any questions at this point in time? Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, just for clarification, again, you all are not seeking to do real ID, or is that something that certain clerks' offices are willing to step up and do?
I don't think we want to get into the real ID.
Okay.
Yeah. Driver's license, yes, we would entertain the conversation for that, but real ID, I don't see a taste for that at the moment.
Fair enough.
Senator Howe.
Just one thing. Chairman Meredith and I have talked about this a couple of times. There have been a lot of input from a lot of different entities, which is how this process needs to work. But the Clerks Association needed to carry the water on this because this deals with your office, and you guys have done a great job. You've been real responsive. You've worked your tails off on this, and we really appreciate how good a job y'all have done and how helpful y'all have been. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Thank you, and I apologize for my tardiness. I was in Veterans Committee. So in deciding to step up and offer services for state IDs and Kentucky driver's licenses, is that something that we could cause to be a shared responsibility, or would it be that the regional offices would only handle the real ID and that the clerk's offices could handle Kentucky driver's license and identification cards that are compliant with voting? Is that something that both offices would, in your vision, would both offices handle that, or would you have to designate one or the other?
From my perspective, and I'll jump on this, the thought of both offices handling it would be difficult because currently there's we're struggling to see their information voter registration wise. So we were looking at it as the opportunity to help, facilitate some of the issues and solve some of the issues that we're seeing in voter registration. If both offices are offering the service, I think that problem would continue from the regional sites on getting the voter registration information into VRS. So that would, I guess we're open to any discussion at this point because we're just opening the door because we see the issue of what it's going to be like on Election Day, and we don't want that to be an issue on Election Day.
Certainly. I appreciate you bringing up the topic. I was just wondering clarification there because I think it's a great idea to start furthering discussion on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Tackett Lafferty, Co-Chair Howe said you don't get recess after this meeting due to your tardiness. Any other questions? Well, again, thank you all for your diligent research on this and on the property records issues. Like I said, we've got a lot of folks who are involved bringing good ideas to the table. But again, you all have an idea of what's going on in all these different realms, whether it be property, whether it be elections, whether it be vehicle records. And so thank you all for your diligent research and your willingness to present to the committee as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
That my attendance was recorded. Thank you.
We've got you. As we finish up today, our next meeting date is November the 17th at 3 p.m. in room 149, which is this room. November schedules are a little strange because of Thanksgiving, so just wanted to get that on everybody's radar. And at this time, seeing no other business, we will be adjourned.